Yo, what it is, YouTube? It's your boy Nitsa coming back with another bullseye of a tutorial here today on the channel. I just want to tell you guys, thank you a lot for being patient with me. Today, I'm going to be bringing the $250,000 Jay-Z vocal chain. Wow. So you guys, I just want to let you know, lately I've been in the studio grinding. I've been in the process of literally rebuilding my whole entire home studio back from the ground up. You know, just considering that I want to go hard with the content creation. I want to continue dropping these gems for y'all. So I was just in the process of, upgrading my home studio, and I'm going to get back to, dropping these gems for y'all. So let's get right to it. Let's not waste no time. So today I wanted to talk about Jay-Z's vocal chain. I'm also going to show you guys how you can build this $250,000 vocal chain literally inside of the Universal Audio Console app. So let's get right to it. So the very first thing that we got to consider about Jay-Z's music is that Jay-Z is a guy who has a lot of swag. He's talking about a lot of high-end designer things, a lot of creaminess and a lot of richness. So that's why I believe it would be the most important thing to figure out a vocal chain that's going to complement his attributes. That's what you need to do as a an engineer. You need to find equipment that's not only going to complement you, but it's not only going to complement your workflow, but also your clients as well. As soon as your clients hop in the studio, they feel like, wow, I love coming to this guy's studio because I sound so great. I do not sound better anywhere else except for this person's studio. So that's what you always need to be considering. How can I get the best equipment that's going to, maximize the strengths of the people who I'm working with, pretty much, essentially, so we can blow. That's what we all want to do. We want to blow, right? So the most important thing I'm seeing is with Jay-Z. Jay-Z had a very open mind. He would bounce around from the Neumann U87 and the U67. So we have to consider something with the Neumann microphones, that these microphones are German. These microphones are originally coming from war times, usually. I think World War I or World War II. I'm not necessarily sure. But the most important thing that we have to understand is that the human ear. So the way the human ear works essentially is that we're not used to listening to crispy, clear things. We're used to the environment around us constantly changing. When we go outside, when we go from room to room, even in our own house, the levels are changing. The acoustics are constantly changing. So our ear is naturally adapted to that. So when they tried to make these Neumann microphones in original, they tried to make it very clean and squeaky and very sounding good. But they were realizing that the process of them being in the war, trying to communicate through radio, that a lot of the times people could not hear what was going on because the ear was not accustomed to those type of things. So that's when they started putting these tubes inside of the microphone to dirty up the sound. And they found that people were able to hear things a lot better because their ear is already adapted to changes in the environment. It's adapted to distortion. And that's what the tube brings us. It brings a pleasant type of distortion. Let's understand with the Neumann U67, that tube is a very popular type of microphone that a lot of people are using. I love the fact that Warm Audio is bringing us an opportunity to have a piece of history inside of our home studios nowadays. They're giving those kind of like those cheap but very comparable alternatives to these classic microphones that can go upwards to like $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. The Townsend Lab, which gives us the ability to have all of these different types of microphones, the 67, the 87, the C800, all of these types of microphones can be accessed. And I think that the Townsend microphone is a great alternative for a home studio, just due to the fact that you never know who's going to walk in through the studio. Sometimes some people's voice don't sound right on a certain microphone. So that's why I think something that is very versatile, that can work on a lot of people, not just yourself, is something you should always consider when you're trying to buy you a microphone for your home studio. You might not want to use something that doesn't work for everybody, because sometimes a tube microphone don't sound good on everybody's voice. Sometimes a solid state microphone don't sound good on everybody's voice. But you can future proof yourself if you purchase something like the Townsend, and it slides right into the UA console so seamlessly. So that's amazing. The next thing that I noticed with Jay-Z's vocal chain is that it looks like Hove, when he was in the studio, he liked to use something like the Neve 1073, something that just works. The reason why something like the Neve is so amazing is just due to the fact that it gives you a lot of versatility. Like I was saying, you need to future-proof yourself. Sometimes you want to get an aggressive distortion sound with that preamp, and sometimes you can get a subtle distortion sound with that preamp. But either way, it's gonna be fitting for the vocalist. Generally, those Neve 1073s, they work a lot of the times on vocals, bass, guitar, on all different types of source material. So let's understand too that right now I'm actually currently speaking through a Neve preamp, luckily. So you guys kind of have an idea of what it kind of sounds like. But the main thing about the Neve that I'm really loving is the fact that it has transistors in it. And let's understand that back in the day, people did not have to use that much compression, because as they're going through that microphone, which is giving them distortion, and they're going through the preamp and everything like that, there's different forms of compression that is actually happening. So distortion in itself, the way it handles the signal, the way kind of it smooths it, is a kind of like a form of compression. Electricity just does not just shoot through. When you're in your house and you flick in the light switch and everything like that, when you hit off on that light switch, it stops. Because the switch is kind of giving it some resistance. I don't know specifically, but it is giving it some resistance. But when you flick it up, it lets the current pass through. And that's kind of how audio works. You have to understand that a vocal is just a signal that's going through a machine. It's literally electricity. So that's why we like things like microphones that give warming characteristics. Also preamps and compressors that give warming characteristics, because that's more relatable to us. We are electricity. We are energy. That's what we are. We're movement. So how much you want to bet if we were cold-blooded reptilians, nobody would care about a warm sound? People would be like, oh man, I want that cold microphone. You want to know why? Because it would be more relatable. So when I'm making music, I'm always trying to make this the feeling of the song be relatable, something that's tangible, something that hits your heart. Because as long as you can hit the heart of the audience as an engineer, you always gonna be good. They're always gonna love the music, because they don't know what it is, but they just feel something. And that's what the warmth gives. That's why people love these pieces of gear, even though they're very old. Is that he actually sold his company, and I believe this was somewhere around like the 70s or the 80s, somewhere around there. He said, okay guys, I'm going to sell my company and I'm not going to make another Neve console for the next 10 years. And then, after that, he opened up the company, which is Focusrite. Then he went ahead and sold Focusrite, and then he finally had his last company before he unfortunately passed away, which is the Rupert Neve Designs. So he was a genius businessman, and the Neve 1073 is just a classic timepiece. We have to understand the difference between the mic impedances. Mic level and line level are two different things. So usually mic level would give you more dB. A Neve can give you up to about 80 dB, and that's good for microphones such as ribbon microphones or dynamic microphones that need a little bit more juice. They need a little bit more sauce. They need a little bit more power to come through with the signal that's going through it. But usually when you're finding yourself using a line level signal, that's usually something that already has power. Kind of like if you had a hardware chain, as soon as you go out of your preamp, you're pretty much on a line level type of situation, because the impedance is different. You don't need that much more gain. Usually in a mixing situation as well is the time you would be using more of the line level type of situation. So this is an amazing piece of equipment. It's very versatile for a home studio, because it will not only work as just a vocal chain, but it can also work in a mixing situation where you're like, okay, I done already recorded. Now let me get a little bit of juice. Now let me get a little sauce. Let me go into my Neve 1073. A great, a cheaper alternative would be something like the Heritage. I was looking at getting this one, but in the end, I didn't end up getting it. I just settled on a Kingdom, but this one is another great my microphone preamp that I would definitely vouch for. Heritage Audio, they're an amazing company coming out with some amazing pieces of hardware right now. And then the next thing that I noticed about Jay-Z's vocal chain, and this video I'm doing it a little bit different. I'm doing it in my way, my imagination way, where I'm not like, oh well, I seen Jay-Z use it. No, I'm using my own imagination, and I'm building a vocal chain for Jay-Z, because that's what you guys need to get. You need to get your ear imagination to start to imagine, how would these type of pieces sound like in my studio? Like, you need to be able to hear a studio, a shootout, and be like, okay, maybe that might work for my voice. That's what I'm trying to help you guys do. So I'm doing this video a little bit different. It's not exactly what he was using, but it's more like just, going over how you can build a hardware vocal chain down the line when you want that. So the next thing I noticed right here is the retro instruments. I believe this is the style level. I'm not sure if this is the style level or the 176. It looks like it is the style level, but either way, they are Verimute compressors. Let's understand the history of them Verimute compressors. So the very first Verimute compressor was the Fairchild. That came from broadcasting and stuff like that, but the Fairchild is classic. It's very classic for its distortion characteristics. It's loaded with tubes and transformers. But then you have a guy like Bill Putnam, who, he is just an absolute legend. He brought this interface that I'm literally talking to, he's the founder of Universal Audio. He made the 1176, the LA2A, and he also made another very underrated unit, which is the 176. And we can emulate this inside of the Universal Audio app. And you know this has got to be very accurate, this emulation, just due to the fact that, of course, it's his company. So you know they are going to be working with him and they're going to have access to the blueprint. So you have something like the 176, which is extremely colored. You know, the compression done inside of Verimute compressors is usually something to do with the bias current. So a CL1B that only has tubes on the input and the output, but it's an optical circuit doing the compression. But this one actually legitimately has the tubes doing the compression. And a reason why this was kind of groundbreaking is just due to the fact that it gave them the ability to actually dial in stuff. Like for example, like the Fairchild, it don't let you dial in nothing. The only thing you have is like fixed attack and releases through the time constant. But this one, the 176s, was groundbreaking. It gave variable ratios, variable attack and release. And of course, like I said, it's kind of like the older cousin to the 1176 in the way that it's reversed. So this is the slowest attack. And you know, the 7 would, as you turn it to the right, it gets faster, kind of like in 1176. But this one is extremely colored, extremely amazing. I'm going to be doing a video dedicated to this one of the most colored compressors of all time. So the beautiful thing about the retro instruments, you know, in itself, is that it kind of has its own distinguishing sound to it, and it gives us a sidechain filter, which is amazing. So I just love the fact that, you know, even a unit like this that was made so back in the day, you know, Fairchild 176, people is still trying to buy it to this day. People is still trying to make plugin emulations of it to this day. That just shows you because it works. So when you building your home studio, you need to find out what's going to work, you know? What's going to work, what's going to do the job. Don't be trying to grab something that somebody recommended and, you know, they're trying to get you to click an affiliate link and all that. No, don't do that. You have to figure out what is going to work for you. You have a specific need inside of your home studio that needs to be met, whether it be with plugins, microphone, equipment, any type of stuff. Before you buy anything, always consider, what is my situation? Am I recording just myself or multiple people? Do I want to do this, you know, as a business, or this is just for me? So you need to always figure that out when you're purchasing equipment. Jay-Z, he was using something along the lines of a Lexicon 480L, I believe. And this is one that is a groundbreaking reverb as well, because, you know, prior to this, a lot of the times what people would be doing in the studios, that they would go to a studio and they would literally have to have a room, like a chamber, and they would mic it up and they would put a speaker and they would send the signal, and then the microphone recording, and it would come back up through the return on the console. So, you know, when the Lexicon 480L came through, it was kind of groundbreaking because people didn't need that. All they needed was one of these old, you know, kind of big old archaic computer systems right here. But it was still a great alternative because it was a lot cheaper than having a whole dedicated space to just something like a reverb. You know, imagine you run in a studio, you might want to use that space to put in another room. So that's what, you know, music is all about. If you want to have a home studio and you want to make money from it, maybe you don't, maybe you do. You just always got to understand the economics, the money of, you know, the whole situation. You know, it is a business. So I believe this is a very, very well refurbished one. I ain't never seen one that looked like this. But for 8 bands, I think that Universal Audio has an absolutely incredible alternative here. And, you know, you get all of the same presets. And the reason why the Lexicon was so amazing is it gave you all these weird presets, all these kinky things. So rather than just having one reverb chamber that only gave you one sound, now you had something that could give you everything that you wanted: a plate, a spring, a hall, a chamber. Everything was there. Then lastly, the last thing that I wanted to talk about is the console. Now, specifically, I'm going based on my favorite song, which is 99 Problems by Jay-Z. That's my favorite song by Jay-Z. And the most important thing here is Andrew Sheps is the one that mixed it, and Mr. Andrew Sheps said that he did mix it on his Neve console. Now let's remember what I was saying in the beginning of the video. You know, Rupert Neve, he had actually sold his company. So these 80 series consoles right here, they were not kind of like originally his baby. These were the ones that came later down the lines. You know, when SSL came into the game using the solid state components, remember how I said that in the video too? You know, we started off with tube, but then we started moving to solid state components. There was a transition. So a lot of the times those older units were kind of very noisy. With the solid state components, it was kind of a lot better because it was a lot more discreet. It was a lot more quiet. And that's where Neve said, hey, I need to compete with SSL, who, you know, they just made a great console. So let's make our own console using the Neve name. So this one is, I'm not sure how much of a hand Rupert Neve had in this one specifically, but I know Andrew Sheps, he used this specific type of console, maybe not this one exactly, to make Jay-Z's 99 Problems. And if you hear that song, it sounds so big and so spacious, and that's what the UAD88RS kind of emulates very well. You know, when you start taking this channel strip specifically and spreading it across your whole mix, there's kind of like this stereo imaging thing that goes on, but the mix just sounds so big and so aggressive. And these compressor settings are very interesting. I feel like they are actually a little bit more musical. Another song that was mixed on this type of console is Adele's Rolling in the Deep. It was mixed by Tom Elmhurst. He used this specific type of console, and if you go listen to that song, 99 Problems in that, it will give you an idea of how not only versatile this type of console is, but how musical it is. So pretty much, I just love the fact that, you know, they were using, you know, some lowered noise components here. So it just sounds very clean, very spacious, very everything sounding great. And I believe this was along the time too where they went away from the Neve 2254, which was the bus compressor, and they moved to the Neve 33609. So they updated that bus compressor as well. And that's pretty much all that I have for this video today. This is Jay-Z's whopping quarter milli vocal chain, but it's still amazing that we're living in this time where you can have an interface and you can get access to a ballpark sound that can help you compete, you know? So I just want to say thanks a lot for being a great part of my YouTube channel. I appreciate you guys. More videos to come. Thanks a lot. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.